How you doing, guys? Welcome back to the Junk Food Zombie channel. You may have seen recently I got a new single-stage reloading setup. I've been loading on this Dillon 550 progressive set for a while, but I wanted to get a single-stage setup in the house, and now I got one. So I got to set up some dies. So I'm going to do a little series for you guys on how to set up some reloading dies. I'm going to make them one die per video to keep it from being a very long video. I'll just do some more manageable sized videos so they're not too long. Now, one thing to remember with reloading dies is every manufacturer makes their reloading dies a little different than the next manufacturer, whether it be the way their locking rings are made, whether it be what function each die does. Some combine functions differently than other companies. So everyone's a little different. So what I'm using, I'll tell you what I'm using, and that way you'll know that if you have something different, it may not be exactly the same. Also, if the company's made dies for a long period of time, like RCBS or Dillon, their dies may have changed within that company. So if that's the case, I will explain that as we go along. The first thing you need to do when you're reloading with dies is your resizing die. You may wet tumble your brass and clean your brass without the primers in them. In some cases, some people do that. They'll have a decapping die. It's a universal decapping die where you just set it in the press and all it does is pop out primers. I'm not going to cover that. It's kind of a different topic. But this is your resizing die. Now, this is an older RCBS resizing die. This is a carbide sizing die. As you can see, it has a carbide insert in there. It's a little shinier. The edge of it is about here. Hopefully you can see that. Now, some dies don't have that. The carbide is nice because it's smooth. It doesn't require you to lube your pistol cases when you resize them, so you don't have to deal with a messy lube or the time involved in lubing all your cases. And it's simple. Now, you can lube them, and they'll go a little smoother, but if you have a good die, it's pretty smooth to begin with. The problem with carbide is it's brittle compared to normal steel, so you need to keep from breaking that carbide on the ram. Now, that also depends on how old the dies are or who makes them, etc. Now, this is an old RCBS die. New RCBS dies, I was actually looking at a set today, they build them differently. Instead of being machined flush like this, they are actually built more like this Dillon set. This is a 40 caliber, but it doesn't matter. They're all should be about roughly the same. You'll see the carbide insert on this die sits a little recessed from the steel edge of that die body. So when you lift the ram, now this is set up for a progressive press, but shell plate, ram, whatever, it kind of works for everything. When you lift that ram, if it hits the edge of that die body, it's not going to hit that carbide insert and crack it, or shatter it, or break it in any way, and damage it. So that's a good thing, the way they make these dies now. But these old dies, they're not like that. So they're actually put into the press differently from one another, and I'll explain how they both work. Another difference is, you'll see that this Dillon die has a pin here. Now that's a decapping pin. This RCBS die is just a resizing die. This resizes the case and pops the primer out. Whereas in the RCBS set, the mouth flaring die does the decapping. So, like I said, they're a little different. RCBS changed their dies now. Now their dies have the decapper in the resizing die like the Dillon, and their mouth flaring die simply expands the case mouth. There's no decapping pin in it anymore. They just changed their dies. So, like I said, whatever dies you get, it may be a little different. A lot of you guys already know this stuff. This is really more for people who might be interested in reloading and want to kind of see what it entails and how things work. And some people might be afraid of, oh, I got to set up all those dies and do adjustments. It's really not that hard. It's pretty simple. And all your dies will come with an instruction booklet of some kind. This is a cool old instruction booklet. But they'll come with instructions on how to do it. I just like to give people something visual to help them learn, because sometimes some people don't take to written instructions as well as seeing things. So I'm just trying to help you out that way. So this sizing die, I'll show you the two ways to set it up. Now, it doesn't matter if it has a decapping pin in it. It's going to work the same way. As far as I know, they're pretty much all set up. The decapping pin is set to a certain length, and it works on its own. You don't have to do anything with it. For the resizing die, these old ones and the new ones, like I said, are different. The new ones that are recessed set up differently. Now, at least with the RCBS, they tell you you'll put the die in. Now, this is for the new ones with the recessed insert. You're going to put this in, you're going to raise the ram, and then you're going to screw this die body down until it hits the top of that ram. Okay, it just touched. And then you would take this lock ring here, and you would lock it down. Just get it a little snug. You don't need to get it real tight. Just get it snug. And then there, on this ring, there's a little lock screw. So you would take an Allen key and you would get that snug down, and then you would put that Allen key in there and you would snug it down. Now, different lock rings work different ways. These require you to put a little bit of lead shot inside so that the steel screw doesn't mess up the threads. Some of them have split rings. RCBS makes split rings now, where the ring is actually split here and the screw goes into the ring this way, and as you tighten it, it squeezes around the die body, which is a much nicer setup because it doesn't damage the threads. It doesn't get stuck. It just works better. So other companies have different different lock rings. Like Lee has a rubber O-ring set in the bottom of their lock rings, and that kind of locks it into place. Everybody's a little different, but they all essentially serve the same purpose. So once you lock that down, you're good to go. Then you can take it out as one unit. Now, this one is an old carbide insert, so it needs to be done a little bit differently. The way this one works is the instructions call for the thickness of a nickel between the shell plate and the bottom of the die, and that keeps that shell plate from hitting that carbide insert and cracking it, since it's exposed because it's machined flush with the rest of the die body. So all I do, since they say the thickness of a nickel, is I get a nickel and I put it on the ram. Now I'll screw this out to make sure I have enough room. Lift the ram with the nickel on it, and then I gently screw this die body down till it hits the nickel instead of the shell holder. Now it's touching the nickel, so now I would just run this lock nut down, snug it up. You don't want to get it real tight. You don't need to tighten the heck out of it, because this has to come out. You get that snug down just enough, and then you lock that lock screw on there. And you get that snug. You don't need to tighten the heck out of it, but enough so that when you take it out, it all moves as one unit. And you should be able to grab the whole thing and undo it. And now it'll come out as one unit. And that's it. That's all it takes. Now I'll take my little nickel out of here. So next time you need to use that die, it's already set. This lock ring doesn't move. It's all one unit because that's snugged down. So you just put it back in the case, you use your other dies, and then when you're ready for this one again, you just pop it back in until it gets down to where it's set, and you're good to go. And now you're set. That's it. You just snug it up a little bit. These dies don't need to be tightened like crazy. All you need to do is get them down and snug them, because they're not going anywhere. This lock ring just holds it in place and keeps it from rotating. That's really all there is to it. The sizing die is very simple. On the Dillon, on the progressive press, it's essentially the same thing. With the Dillon dies, you'll lift the ram. Now this has a shell plate. Let me get a little light on that. This has a shell plate instead of a shell holder. Essentially, you'll do the same thing. You'll lift it up and you'll screw that die down until it just touches the shell holder and lock it down. If you have an old style, where like the RCBS one there, where the carbide is exposed, then you would follow the instructions for that, and you might back it off a little bit. But generally, it's going to give you the instructions with the dies on how to set up that particular die. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to show you how to do it, give you something visual to work with, and that's that, guys. It's real simple to set up a resizing die. Again, this was nowadays would be resizing and decapping die. And the decapping part, like I said, you don't got to do anything with it. It's built into the die. And then when you lift your shell in the press, it'll resize it. And if it had a decapping pin in it, it would pop that little primer out and fall down here into this tray. And that's all there is to it. And it doesn't matter which press you use. It's all essentially the same. The powder measure part, the charging the case, works a little bit differently between the single stage and this progressive. On the progressive, it has a little mechanism that drops the powder in and flares the case mouth as you go, but that's for another video. We'll get into that. It's a little bit more complex than this, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea how to set up a resizing die. It's real simple. If you're looking to get into reloading and you're a little worried about difficulty, it's not. If you can sit down and take your time and you can concentrate on something, it's not that bad. One die at a time, follow the instructions, and you're good to go. So I'll catch you guys on the next one, and we'll take care of the mouth flaring die, and in this case, mouth flaring and decapping die. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you later. Bye. How you doing, guys? Welcome back to the Junk Food Zombie channel. That was a bug.